My name is Demetria Sparrow. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm currently 22. I live in Barrie, Ontario, Canada. I work in a corrugate factory and I work on one of the press machines there. So I spend most of my time there. Not all having the opportunity to be, glammed up like I want to, but it pays the bills and it makes me happy. So the way I came to understand my identity, something I did not tell my family. For one thing, I wasn't in a very good state when I transitioned to be able to explain a lot of this stuff to them. Because the truth is, I didn't have a very feminine childhood. I didn't have a lot of gender expression until the time I was 19 when I transitioned. I mean, I cross-dressed when I was 11. So there's kind of that going on. The main sort of spurt of where the gender thoughts sort of came in, the dysphoria and all of that, was during puberty. It happens with apparently quite a few people. There were a few instances before that. I just have a fascination with certain things, but it was very much like puberty was like, this is you, this is what's happening. So in high school, there was an art project, and my idea for it was having two twins in one frame, and so it was a male and female twin, and so my idea was okay, I could possibly get maybe a twins from high school to do it. But then my brain is immediately going to, maybe I could just fill in for this part. Maybe I could just do that. And so, yeah, I got my stepmom to basically do drag on me. So I was about 16 when that happened. So there was that. And also I come from a more creative background. And when I was talking about these feelings kind of insert themselves in private places where people won't put two and two together. There is a certain character I wrote about that at first I was oh, this is just this beautiful character and she's my one true love. But now that I look back, I'm that character is me. That is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's I predicted my personality throughout my childhood, the antisocial behavior, the loneliness, the kind of narcissism, I'm not gonna lie. And also you kind of think you're crazy, and then you try to figure out certain instances where, what could have made me think like this? And so that was really weird. And so now that I look at it, it's okay, I tried to put my personality, put my identity into this female character. And any story I write, it's all the male characters are often really boring, and it always ends up being a mono with two women. So there was that too. What kind of made me transition was it's basically when the feelings can't be hidden anymore, and they need to be expressed in some sort of better way and in some sort of healthier way. So it was for a while where it was do I always feel this way? Is this something that I always want to be? That was a big question since I was 15. When I was 16, 17, I was actually borderline authoritarian. I was a very right-wing young boy. And what happened was I bottled up a ton of emotions in my head, because when you're very right-leaning, you tend to be very look after your own lane, don't think about it. It's a lot of right-leaning stuff is toxic masculinity in a lot of ways. And a lot of family issues, a lot of gender identity issues were kind of bottled up, and you don't really know who you are. And then when I broke out of that, when I broke down, all these emotions just came about. I mean, at that time, I was a borderline authoritarian, a fascist, not Nazi, but fascist. And that is a mindset where you look after your own lane, you don't think about anything, you just do what you're supposed to do, no matter what the costs. And the costs for me were bottling up a ton of emotions. So there was a ton of that. I was actually in a deep, deep depression at the time. I was actually not financially secure. I was actually spending a lot more money than I should be. I just had a lot of really bad habits. There were some drinking habits for a little bit. There were some eating habits. And anything concerning finance was really, really bad. And I didn't talk to anybody. And you're kind of under this, idea that like you can solve everything yourself. Basically, by the time I was 19 and I was able to have a glass of wine, beer, whatever, I basically got drunk a few times, and every time that happened, I was super emotional, and I knew I was like, I want to be a woman, like so bad. And it ended up with like, I like bawled my eyes out after like every time I drank. And at that point I was like, okay, something has to change. And I gotta basically process this stuff. And it's like, okay, where can this identity manifest and it'll be healthy? The first 6 months are probably the hardest. And the thing you have to understand in your first 6 months to like a year, you're kind of like a big kid again, because you're going through like an adolescence again. It's almost like, let me have the tea party I never got to have when I was 5. And it's like kind of like puerile behavior, but also it's like, then everyone is kind of like looking at you weird. And then like society is like, you're not good enough for us. And then, family stuff where you think everyone's accepting, but it takes a lot longer actually for people to understand it and deal with it. That is obviously very hard, and it takes a while to kind of come to grips with that and kind of build a thicker skin once again when you've gone through that second adolescence. I started hormone therapy, I suppose, about 6 months in. I was on Spiro, which dries you out. So then we moved to Cyproterone. Then I started estrogen, I think in like the 7th month. And I've been taking that ever since. It kind of depends on the person in terms of what their sort of journey is going to be. It's not the same for every single person. For me, I was very self-conscious about my voice. So that was one thing I wanted to work on quite a lot in order to alleviate that particular dysphoria. And a lot of the thing was trying to figure out how to pass well and how to feel good in the gender identity you identify as. And for me, it was learning about, makeup, learning about hair and skincare and dressing well. And you just have to pace yourself and not be too hard on yourself as well in terms of your appearance, because it's as much of a difficult time it can be. It's also a very rewarding time. It's new experiences. You're finally, seeing the side of yourself for the first time. So there's a lot of stuff to sort of deal with. The difficulties I faced in my journey, I'm not going to lie, I feel like I'd be kind of conceited in saying I've had it the worst, because I really haven't. Pretty much all of my family members are talking to me, and I'm the more emotional one, so I'm more cut off others. So there's that. I'm actually very fortunate in that regard, and I'm actually working full-time. I'm in a union, so I think that's probably more rare for trans people. So I'm very, very fortunate in that regard. I would say the big difficulty for me is kind of coming to grips with, I guess, just how people view you. It can be very, very shocking and weird, because I think it's kind of understandable to know that, if you're a straight white dude, you're kind of doing okay. It's not like you enter a room and someone's gonna poke fun at who you are. It's like you kind of got to say something first, right? So it's but now it's when you become, basically a minority, there are times where you walk in a room And then already people have made assumptions about you. You didn't even have to talk about your opinion on something. So that can be very, very difficult. And it's weird because one thing is we like to make sort of labels and sort of identify, put people in groups, basically. And one of the most important things I learned was that transphobia doesn't know a face. It's not more a thing for men. That is definitely not true. It's not for older people. There are a lot of younger people who are transphobic, and there are people of different races. But all these people could have the exact opposite opinion. So it's very important to not make assumptions in your head when you see someone coming up to you and make assumptions on how they're going to feel about you. Because there are times where you'll make a little bit of an ass of yourself in public. And just treat people how you want to be treated, right? Don't make assumptions about people. I think the big issue for me, at least this is more of a, in my opinion, what was really tough for me was finding employment, because I made some decisions in my life that led me from one point to another, and wasn't the best decisions. And I found there was a long period where I wanted to go to a job that I was proud of. And I could go, I work here, I can make this some money, and I can support myself. And for a while I was working retail part-time, and I hated it. And it just felt so humiliating, to be honest. And then you have so many doubts about yourself, like, should I have done this? Should I have done that? And eventually I went to a corrugate factory as a temp, and been working there ever since. And it has been unbelievably rewarding to be at a place where I don't have to deal with a whole lot of scrutiny. Everyone is really, really sweet and really, really nice. But what I will say is, as sweet as everybody is, there is always a thought in my head that perhaps in my first year of transition, if I came to work there, would I have been treated the same? If they knew me before as male, and then I came out in the middle of being employed there, which a lot of trans people have to deal with, is really, really tough. And I think I did have an advantage there in a lot of ways. I was very lucky and fortunate that I was kind of in the right place at the right time. This place was hiring, and I became a little bit more passable to where I didn't have to deal with all of that drama that could have been there. So yeah, again, not saying I have the absolute worst experience. I'm actually pretty fortunate and very thankful. The problem with my expectation of coming out is a lot of naivete, in that everyone is okay with it, everything is great. And the thing is, again, you go through that second adolescence where you're kind of just like on top of the world. You feel like no one can challenge you. You are you, and you're gonna show the world. It's like that one time where I saw like this like pretty obviously like gay boy like dancing across the street when we were like at the stoplights. I'm like, that's the first time this guy's come out. So it's like you're high on life, and then people start having problems with you, and sometimes you experience very personal rejection, and you feel like when you're in that second adolescence, when your hormones literally are going crazy, it's like a big stab in the back. So be aware of that you got to be prepared for how people are gonna look at you, and don't expect the worst of people, but don't expect that everything is going to go absolutely smoothly. I live in Ontario, so I mean, that's pretty good. One of the other things that was very tough for me to deal with, but I should have seen it coming, was the trans community can be a little bit difficult. That word, transgender, what does it mean to people? And, when you finally are with a community that can understand you and have a similar experience with you, you feel like you can just pour your life to them and all of the emotions that you've been up inside for years to them. And on top of that, if you're a trans woman, it's kind of like the first time you feel like you can be in a group and like talk about your emotions like fully, because when you're a boy, you're kind of taught not to do that, and like you kind of just don't know how to do that. So there's all of that, and then you start to find that some people have certain standards of what makes someone valid, what makes someone not valid. And you feel like you have to now validate your identity based on what the community is suggesting that you have to be, instead of you just plainly saying, this is me and I am valid. One of the other issues is there's a lot of projection. There's tons of sort of in-group embarrassment, sort of distancing yourself from someone who's a little more, more cringy a little bit. And there are people who like to distance themselves from those people. And it's just weird because it's like, we're all the same, and it's really weird, and it creates like a really toxic atmosphere. And it's all about like going after your own personal interests, right? If you can distance yourself from someone who's a little crazy on that one end, but it can up you and make you look good in front of everybody else, then the part of you, the selfish part of you, is going to go for it. But it's not good. It's not cool. And I just think it seems there's just a little bit more of that than I think people like to think. Like, how many times if you're trans, have you heard like these particular types of queer or trans people are making us look bad? And I just don't like that entire thing, because I feel like queer should just be queer. Tons of people have these like weird standards of what makes you like trans and what validates you. And I honestly don't think the community kind of helps that, where it's kind of like, you don't need to validate yourself because the group is going to validate you. And that can be very, very toxic because you don't know how to really validate yourself. And the problem is you have to kind of figure out how to distance yourself from a lot of that, like the political sphere, because you start to freak yourself out and you feel like you have to live up to some sort of standard and try to validate your feelings. Like, one of the feelings I sometimes discourage myself to have, or I'm like, oh, I can't have these feelings. If I watch a movie with, say, like a daughter with like a father figure, something like The Glass Castle, for instance, or if you watch something like AI, where it's like a mother-son relationship kind of throughout the movie, I'm going to identify with the latter. And the thing is, it's weird because you'll find that you're like, okay, I can't, I'm like, but that doesn't make sense. Like, but if I'm a girl, then I should be sympathizing with like the girl character. But it could just be, that's what my experience is, right? So those are instances of stuff where I'm not gonna deny what I can relate to more. I'm hoping that every time I go to bed, that I wake up, I feel good, and knowing that last night or yesterday, I got, just one step further in whatever thing I pursue. Planning financially for the future is like a really big thing for me. So if I can do that, if I put a certain amount away every month, that I can feel good about that. And I just don't want to be feeling like I'm going backwards or I'm wasting this time in my life. So there it is. My dream for the future is to be healthy and to succeed and hopefully be at a point where I am kind of good at something. And in this case, like beauty wise. So I'm looking to be really good at that. Since I'm 22 and I'm a little bit of a youngin', I still got a little bit of angst in me. I'd say what really gets me out of bed in the morning is honestly just proving everyone I don't like wrong, that I can be good at something. So, I mean, I do a YouTube channel that helps trans women and cross-dressers present themselves and stuff like that. And that is one of the projects that can help me I can be good at this thing. I've always wanted to be good at like a particular sort of skill, because I mean, blue collar jobs are great and I respect everyone in it. But the thing is, it's not like something you go to school for, right? So, I mean, if I can go to like a mini school in my head and like be good at like these things and be able to help people at these things, then that would be really, really cool. And honestly, just going to bed knowing that like I didn't waste time, because I don't want to, everyone tells me like, 21, 22, it's like the best time of your life and stuff. And I just want to make sure I don't screw it up. It really helps, at least in my experience, that basically the outside matches the inside. And that is like one of the big things for a lot of trans people that can cause a ton of mental and social anguish. So I'm fairly happy with where I am. I always want to see what I can do better. The most liberating thing about coming out is you're finally who you are.